co-founder of the Network Architecture Lab and is an associate design director at 2x4, where she leads environmental projects at the intersection of architecture, branding, and storytelling. Leigha was a Munchenheim Fellow at the University of Michigan's Taubman College and a Fellow of Architecture at the Academy Schloss Solitude in Stuttgart. Her work has been published and exhibited at the New Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, the Museum of the City of New York, and the Contemporary Art Center in Vilnius, among other locations. Welcome, Leigha.
Talked about it in a while, so it's been a pleasure to kind of revive it. I wanted to talk about these three terms: document, documentation, and documentary. The difference in their meanings and how they operate, and their potential influence on architecture, and how this relates to the desire in our present society today. With these terms, I'm also interested in this kind of ambiguity between form and content. Are they objects? Are they artifacts, actions, or behaviors? For over 40 years, the photographer Martin Parr has been documenting the mass tourism industry, photographing tourists and attractions around the world, dispelling the myth of these famous locations with the reality of actually being there, surrounded by tourists trying to take photos, often making the same predefined images as everyone else and everyone before. In recent years, he's talked about a change in tourist behaviors. Mobile phone cameras and digital photography, before mobile phone cameras and digital photography, people would take one or a couple photographs in iconic locations and move on. Today, he says, everyone has to be photographed in front of every feature, documenting the minutiae of the entire visit, making it nearly impossible for him to take a photograph without someone also taking a picture or posing for one. It makes you wonder, is it more looking or less looking if a viewer is watching the world through a screen? This image by photographer Thomas Struth was taken in 2001 before cell phone cameras and selfie culture. In his series of museum photographs, he positioned himself in front of works of art to capture the postures and expressions of viewers as a way of recontextualizing the art, showing its impact on the viewer as they gaze upon it. As the counterpoint, in a private tour of the Louvre, Beyoncé and Jay-Z take photographs of themselves with the art. Here, the viewer is the subject, the art is the backdrop. The image of the experience becomes more important than the experience itself. Social media practices work to devalue the physical presence of the place and its contents by biasing the artifacts that document it. This first project, Pleasure Box, is an installation modeled after storage lockers and provides a place for people to store their cell phones, if for no other reason but to take a break from them. In doing so, it sets up a choice between continuing on living in what is essentially a simulated reality augmented through our mobile devices, or an everyday reality of simply lived experiences. Each box locks with a typical key, but comes with a mechanism that obscures access to the lock for set durations of time, ranging from 1 minute to 8 minutes, which is unknown to the user, and it leaves them detached, free to either enjoy the other works of, in this case, a group exhibition, or to anxiously wait for the timer to run out. Stands inside the boxes hold phones upright so video can be captured while locked inside. The phones can now document experiences independent of their users. Using video displays and scaled physical constructs, the interiority of the box is subverted, and smartphones are transported to new worlds and realities, scaled down to the object, the phone in this case, and demonstrated by the videos taken. Each compartment is a new kind of site, one in which the audience is the device, and representations are produced not for human perception, but for the object. In this particular version of Pleasure Box, there were video displays showing films, animations, tutorials, live feeds. There are scaled physical environments replicating real physical spaces, as well as commissioned artworks by artists with their own interpretations of this new kind of site. We experience so much of the world through our devices. We use them to document our lives, referring back to our memories by replaying videos and photographs, often seeking experiences just to document them. In this case, the device captures these experiences without us, but in the end, we consume them in just the same way. This was a piece that the artist Chauza made that was like, it's kind of like immersive forest based on a series of works that they have that are larger scale. And another iteration of the pleasure box was created for an exhibition at the Contemporary Art Center in Vilnius. In this exhibition called Detachment, which was put on by myself and with Casillas Fernellis, included 2 photo series, a large interactive installation that responded to Wi-Fi credentials emitted by cell phones as people entered the room, and 2 new pleasure boxes. This version of Pleasure Box deals with the fact that while we willingly broadcast details of our personal lives to the public in social spheres, our gadgets are also transmitting vast amounts of personal information into the atmosphere, where surveillance systems can freely detect them. Each compartment displayed live CCTV video from different spaces throughout the museum, tapping into the existing surveillance structure. And so as you wandered the museum with your phone inside, your phone could capture this surveillance video of you, in essence, creating a new kind of selfie. Meanwhile, if you placed your phone inside the pleasure boxes, it kept it safe from the surveillance system that was powering Perkunas, this large HVAC installation that picked up Wi-Fi credentials. So as people entered the room, the more data that it was picking up, it would change the speed of this HVAC fan so that essentially, as you were picking up more data, the ducts roared and the room roared louder or softer depending on the number of signals it would pick up. This project called YourCribs is a TV series produced with Farzan Latwijam that was shown at Storefront for Art and Architecture over the course of a few months. And we were interested in the pervasive culture of YouTube videos that inadvertently broadcast private spaces to the public sphere. Though most of these spaces are intended only as backdrops and are often not even considered or designed or even cleaned up, this is the first time that we are able to see inside so many private homes. So this series combines this YouTube culture of video making with the early 2000s reality TV program MTV Cribs, which featured tours of celebrity homes. So like Cribs, we were broadcasting homes of architects, designers, and curators in New York, but unlike the tour-guided format of Cribs, we adapted the conventions of YouTube video genres to showcase their homes. So this is a selection of videos where they were each asked to make a tutorial, and in this case, they were all making tutorials of paperweights. This is, oh wait, I don't know if there's sound? It's kind of, is there sound? Yeah, I don't.
Welcome back to this series, which is about how to make a paperweight. Let's more or less begin with the problem of what a paperweight is. What is a paperweight is probably what some of you are asking. And often I find that one needs a paperweight when you have a small piece of paper that you can't hold on to with your hand. For instance, it'd be very inconvenient for me to be working on my laptop and then also trying to hold down a piece of paper. So I'll get to this a little bit later. I'll explain what this piece of paper is a little bit later.
That was just the first minute of an 8-minute video, which I highly recommend watching. In fact, all of these videos are like fantastic, in my opinion. But it was fun doing this, not only to get to see where these people live, but also to kind of experiment with different ways of documenting them. And in a way, we're asking them to perform. So you're seeing a persona that doesn't necessarily match to the kind of persona that if you know these people that they already have. But then you're also seeing this kind of range of lived experiences in New York. So you have, like this is a series of unboxing videos, and this is the one series where most of the people involved were showing videos that kind of related to what they do professionally. So Bjarke had just launched a book, and so he was unboxing his book, and it kind of ended up being like an advertisement. But you get this idea of like he lives in this fancy loft, and he has all these toys. Karen Wong is a deputy director of the New Museum, and her home is just filled with like beautiful, amazing art and gifts from artists. And she's unboxing a gift that was given to her that is it's an Urs Fischer sculpture, but the box that it came in was actually like just as beautiful as the sculpture. So she opens it and like sets the sculpture aside and talks about the box. And Daniel Perlin is of many things. He's also a sound artist, and so he built a custom kind of sound that where he's opening this box and the sound kind of emits. But you also get like this. He also lives in this post-industrial loft in a very cool part of Brooklyn. This is a series of ASMR videos. Rosalind Shea is an architect doing a video where she's producing these very delicious and crunchy sounds, making toast. Chris Wipkin is an artist, and he has a series of cards that are part of one of his projects. And instead of talking about the project, he uses them to produce also very yummy sounds. And then Michael Young whispers some beautiful text into the microphones. And then a series of reviews. Jen Berrien's an artist, and Glenn Cummings a graphic designer in New York. And these last two videos that we made, we really tried to capture like many different parts of the home. I think it's YourCribs.net. All of these videos are captured, and I highly recommend watching them when you have a few minutes here and there. So in this last series of projects, I wanted to kind of address this idea of documentation as a kind of way of working, to create images not as a kind of neutral or naive depiction of reality, but as a way of coming to terms with reality and actively producing reality that might have impact on beliefs, actions, and politics. So this project, Clouds, is a photo essay that documents the self-storage industry as cloud storage for domestic objects. If digital clouds provide data storage with remote servers, then aren't storage facilities the analog clouds for our homes? I took this series of photographs at a time when images of data centers were kind of appearing everywhere, and they were becoming this kind of aestheticized space, and so I was trying to mimic some of that like starkness. I mean, these are both stark spaces to begin with. They're not really spaces for humans. But I was also interested in these storage facilities as a kind of embodiment of the American dream, or a byproduct of the American dream. The American single-family home being territory for the domestication of post-war technology. The structure itself is prefabricated, duplicated, and commodified. We're replete with televisions, coffee tables, and dishwashers. The fact that consumerism fueled the commercialization of domesticity. Between 1960 and 2000, household consumption increased by 400%. It's probably even more since 2000, and homes are bursting at the seams. But even in economic downturns, households continue to acquire more objects. And now the multi-billion dollar self-storage industry services 1 in every 10 American households. These spaces and these images come to represent stagnant pasts and latent futures. And an online publication that these photographs went into, I paired images with architectural quotes. So here, Rem, to have and not to have, to own and to crave, finally collapsed in a single emotion. But ultimately, we know that many people use storage facilities when they lose their homes to foreclosure, get evicted, or have to downsize for economic reasons. The spaces come to represent larger systemic problems with access to housing and decent jobs. One of the reasons I took these photographs was to find alternative ways to represent architecture of foreclosure, which inadvertently or inherently is more about the kind of neoliberal structures and capital than the houses themselves. In another photo series called Architecture of Collapse, I was interested in changing the image of architecture during the foreclosure crisis of 2008. During the time, the crisis was widely portrayed through images of boarded up houses and homes in disrepair, displacing the image of the crisis onto these buildings that were merely byproducts of essentially invisible financial structures. The economic collapse was the product of the greatest attempt to turn architecture into capital to date, which erased the physical value of a building and dematerialized architecture into units of intangible capital. These photographs show the entrances to the 10 largest finance and media corporations in New York at the time of the collapse, reminding us of the role of architecture in the crisis and how these corporations understood it. So that was Goldman & Sachs, and this is AIG, which was later converted to luxury condos. Merrill Lynch. These photographs were also printed in the business section of the New City Reader, which was a kind of iterant newspaper that produced on site the New Museum in 2010. The series was an attempt to make images in opposition to the representations of mass media. By photographing the buildings of the financial institutions at fault, the hope was to connect these ephemeral neoliberal networks with the permanent structures that house them. Another project that deals with some of these same, or mini project, let's say, deals with some of these same issues, was one, at the time there was really this aestheticization with the foreclosed home in 2008. It was just like proliferated media everywhere. And it was the plywood windows, the overgrown lawns, the image of vacancy. These photographs were taken in Orange, New Jersey, a predominantly black suburb of New York that was hit hard with foreclosures. I had been working with Michael Meredith and Hilary Sample of Moss on an exhibition on public housing for an exhibition at MoMA. And we had this kind of difficult decision, like it was a design problem, but then we also wanted to document the site itself. And we had a really difficult time like coming to terms with how to represent the existing condition. Because although there were a large number of vacant houses and properties, the city was actually quite vibrant and dense. Like it's a suburb of New York, but it had the same density as many parts of many neighborhoods in New York. And when you go there, the streets felt lively and the neighborhoods had really active communities. But you couldn't, I mean, it was like every other house was boarded up. So you couldn't avoid like reproducing these same images that we were seeing every day in the news. So our solution was to produce a film of the city just after dusk, when the sun was down and the specific material qualities of the homes would be erased, and we are left with only the activation of these spaces through light, sound, and the inhabitants of themselves. The material qualities of the architecture was charged with political, social, and economic dimensions, and were weighted and misleaded. So with this strategy, the intention was to kind of create a new image of what this city was really like without the kind of weight of the foreclosed home. So this is like, it was a very long, slow panning video. So this is a short clip of that. But a friend of mine, the artist Chris Wupkin, and I drove through Orange like throughout the summer and just drove a car with a camera suction cup to the top of it really slowly through the streets and kind of spliced all these sections together. What's nice is that you start to see like the people activating their porches, and you see lights turn on in windows and TVs flickering through the windows. You get a sense of activity, like it's not really this vacant place. And so, you know, talking about some of these projects, it's like, on the one hand, the obsession with the documentation of everyday life that we have with mobile technology, it has a way of reconstructing and constructing realities, these parallel realities that you can basically build a life for yourself on social media that may or may not map to what your everyday existence is like. But then also thinking about it in terms of a way of working, that these documentary modes potentially have this way of, as something that is like a crossover between representation and reality, can have the power to like recreate images in either a way to work in service of something or against it.
presenter is